You know, when you think about the United Kingdom today, you're really talking about two different countries. One is this global hub of incredible wealth, a city just packed with millionaires and billionaires. And the other, well, that's a story of wages that aren't going anywhere, of falling life expectancies, and towns that feel like they've been left behind.
First, let's just look at one side of that coin, London. We're talking about a city that's home to more than 200,000 millionaires and a staggering 45 billionaires. It is, by almost any measure, an extraordinarily wealthy place. But that incredible concentration of wealth, well, it really only tells half the story.
Because as soon as you step outside of London and look at the rest of the country, a really startling picture begins to emerge. Get this, the average citizen in the UK now has less disposable income than someone living in the 5 poorest states in America.
And if you go to the UK's old industrial heartlands, the situation becomes even more severe. Entire cities that were once the engine of the country now rank among the poorest in all of Western Europe. In fact, life expectancy in some parts of a city like Blackpool has fallen so dramatically it's actually now lower than it is in Rwanda.
It's a shocking state of affairs for a nation that once led the entire world. So how did the UK become so profoundly divided? How did the kingdom break?
To really get our heads around this, we're going to start with the policies that completely reshaped the nation. Then we'll look at the real price of that transformation, see how London became a world unto itself, and finally, look at what this all means for the UK's very unbalanced future.
Okay, so our story really kicks off back in 1979. Margaret Thatcher is elected Prime Minister, and she inherits an economy that is in absolute crisis. The biggest problem? Runaway inflation. It was just out of control, eating away at the value of money and creating this vicious cycle of prices and wages spiraling ever upwards.
So, the new government strategy was basically a kind of economic shock therapy. The plan had 3 main parts. First, they wanted to strangle the money supply. Second, they hiked interest rates to historic highs to make borrowing really expensive. And third, they slashed government spending.
And, you have to say, in terms of its primary goal, the policy worked. The bitter medicine did what it was supposed to do. Inflation, which was tearing along at 13% in 1979, was brought all the way down to just 5% by 1983.
But taming that inflation came at an absolutely staggering price. That combination of sky-high interest rates and a much stronger currency had some devastating side effects that would end up reshaping the entire economic map of the country. And that brings us to our next chapter. Because while one part of the economy was being crushed, a whole other part, finance, was being unleashed through massive deregulation. This created a new economic reality, but one that was fundamentally unequal from the start.
See, back in 1979, manufacturing was the absolute bedrock of the British economy. It accounted for nearly a third of the country's entire economic output. Millions and millions of jobs were tied directly to this industrial base.
But just look at this. By 1990, that industrial base had been completely gutted. Manufacturing's share of the economy was almost cut in half, dropping all the way to just 16%. And employment in the sector? It plummeted by nearly 40%.
Now this is where you start to see the social consequences. During that exact same period, while the country's overall wealth per person actually rose by 30%, inequality exploded, rising by 40%. We measure that using something called the Gini coefficient. All you need to know is that a higher number means more inequality. So yeah, Britain was getting richer, but that new wealth was being shared far, far less equally.
And here is a really crucial point. Not all jobs are created equal. As you can see here, 100 jobs in manufacturing could support up to 900 other indirect jobs. Think of the vast network of suppliers, services, and local shops. The new jobs in finance and banking in London, though, they had a much, much smaller multiplier effect. They tended to concentrate wealth in one place rather than spreading it out across the country.
So this whole economic transformation turned London into a global financial superpower, no doubt about it. But in doing so, it also became a kind of golden cage, an island of incredible prosperity that was becoming more and more detached from the rest of the United Kingdom. And here's where we see a real paradox. Even with all the higher wages and job opportunities, on average, more British citizens actually move away from London than move to it. It's one of the only major cities in the UK where more locals leave than arrive. So, why would that be?
The answer is really simple: housing.
It's all about housing. While the median household income in London is about 14% higher than the national average, the absolutely staggering cost of housing eats up almost all of that advantage. Once you factor in housing costs, that income premium just shrinks to a measly 1%.
And a major reason for those astronomical housing prices is the flood of foreign capital into the city. Because there are basically no legal restrictions on foreign property ownership, London's real estate market effectively became a global safe deposit box for the world's wealthy. In early 2024, more than a quarter of all homes sold in the city were bought by foreign buyers.
And just to put that 27% figure in perspective, let's look at another global financial hub, New York City. The equivalent number there? It's just 0.3%. That is a 90 times difference, which just goes to show how truly unique and extreme London's situation is.
And look, this deep structural divide between London and the rest of the UK, it's not some accident of history. It is the direct result of decades of deliberate policy choices and profoundly skewed national investment.
Just take a look at transport investment. As this chart shows, London gets nearly £1,200 per person. Now compare that to the Northeast, which gets just £430. That's almost 3 times less. This kind of chronic underinvestment makes it harder for cities outside London to connect, to grow, and to be productive. And over the years, that funding gap really adds up. If the north of England had received the same funding per person as London, it would have gotten an extra £140 billion in investment. To put that in perspective, that's enough money to build 7 brand new Elizabeth lines.
We see the exact same pattern when we look at public spending on research and development. London gets £60 per person, while the North gets just 21 and the Midlands a mere 14. This creates a powerful reinforcing loop. Investment flows to London, so its economy grows faster, which then attracts even more investment, leaving other regions falling further and further behind.
And the result is what we have today, a nation built around a single, supercharged city where prosperity is concentrated in just a few square miles. For so many people elsewhere, it feels like the empire is gone, the factories are gone, and the future itself is shrinking. It is a kingdom deeply and tragically divided.